Hi, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. How are we doing today? How are we doing right now? How are we feeling? Oh, we don't sound too good.
Amazing.
Are we feeling good for real? Yes?
For real.
Fantastic. For real, for real. Okay, great. Well, I'm super excited for this session. I've been waiting all day to sit with these lovely people. And this session is called Rise Together. Any ideas about what that might mean? What does rising together mean to you? Shout it out.
Navigating life as a community and taking your
We might have some virtual attendees, so just so that they can hear you, that's why we're going to use the microphone, yeah?
navigating life as a community and, having your village that is there.
Navigating life as a community and having your village. I like it. Robert is our resident mic runner.
Antithesis of the crab syndrome.
Antithesis of the crabs in a barrel syndrome.
Yeah, the crabs pull each other down.
Say more about the crabs in a barrel, just so that we can all share
So
that.
if you ever gone crabbing, crabs tend to, when one tries to escape, instead of helping each other, they pull them back down. So they make sure that everybody stays in there, one stays in there. So it's the opposite of that, really helping each other to be the best that we can be.
I love that. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, for just a moment, I want you, if you'll indulge me, just close your eyes. And I want you to think about a time when you felt a deep sense of connection with other people. At a moment when you realized that your well-being, how you were feeling, what you were feeling was intertwined with theirs. Just take a minute and think about what that felt like in that moment, what that experience was like. Just recall that last time. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Did we all think of a time? Can we shout out some things that we felt? Welcoming, connected, comfort. Any other thoughts? Love, yeah. So there's something really special about when we feel connected with other people, right? And that's what we're going to explore today, is frameworks for connectedness. And what we're going to use, actually, is this South African concept of Ubuntu. Is anyone familiar with that concept, Ubuntu? Great. Well, fortunately for you, we'll get a deep dive into that today. But Ubuntu essentially means I am because you are or because we are. Right? I am because you are, or because we are. And so I'm really excited to dive into this topic today. It's a South African concept, and so I am pleased to be joined by Sir Reuben Brigety, who most recently served as U.S. Ambassador to South Africa. And so to kick us off, can you help ground us in Ubuntu? What is it? What did it mean to you? And of course, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So, as Lois-An said, Ubuntu is a Zulu word that means I am because we are, calling us to recognize and uplift our common humanity. And so, you've probably all seen the Diplomat on Netflix, right? So you have some idea of what an ambassador kind of does, although that vibe is kind of a Hollywood-wise version. But in an embassy abroad, especially a big one, the ambassador in our system is the personal representative of the President of the United States. So it's a really big kind of power differential. And how you decide to exercise that power says a great deal of the tone you want to set for that team. And so when I walked into the embassy in South Africa, the U.S. Embassy, I said, we are going to practice Ubuntu diplomacy. Meaning that in everything we do, both with our host government colleagues, but also in terms of how we treat each other in the embassy, we are going to treat each other in the concept of our common humanity. Because the embassy in South Africa has about 1,500 people that work for it. And of those 1,500, 800 are South African nationals. And so there are all these sorts of predictable kind of fault lines in terms of the power differentials between the Americans that work there and the South Africans that have been there forever. And I made clear that the tone that I wanted to set is that regardless of where one sat in the hierarchy, we were all here in this and recognize our common humanity. And I'll tell you two quick stories from that, if I may, that kind of emphasize it. So my personal driver as ambassador is a man named Solomon. And he had been working for the embassy for 22 years. And Solomon's probably actually at least a decade older than I am. And about a year into my tenure, I realized, I'd learned that Solomon actually lived 3 hours away from the embassy. And every morning for 22 years, he would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take a taxi, then a bus, then a bus, then a taxi, in order to make sure he was at the embassy at 6 a.m. to start his shift, driving for the ambassador. And so when I heard that, I realized that I am going to make the effort to bring my family to your village, to honor you in your village, in your space. And we did. And it was wonderful. The village turned out, and it was a great feast, whatever. But more importantly was the sign of respect that I showed as the ambassador for his effort. And I can promise you, it wasn't just about him. His own village will talk about that for decades. And everybody else in the embassy will know that that's the kind of ambassador that we have. And if the ambassador can do that, every other supervisor can engage. I'll tell you one other quick story. During the darkest days of apartheid, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who at the time was Archbishop of Cape Town, first black Archbishop of Cape Town, would stop every day at 4 o'clock, regardless of what was going on, and have tea with his staff in the spirit of Ubuntu, to say we are just going to stop and recognize our common humanity amidst the struggle. So one of the things that I started at the embassies, I started a tradition that we called the bishop's tea. We didn't do it every day, but once every couple of weeks, I would stop and have tea with some poor. I'd go to the motor pool and have tea with the motor pool guys, or I'd go to the warehouse. And I was told it was the first time an ambassador had ever been to the warehouse they could ever remember. And we'd stop, and we'd have tea, and we'd just engage. Sometimes we'd have something stronger than tea. And that's when I said, thank God the Archbishop was an Episcopalian and not a Baptist. But all of which goes to set the tone for literally how you choose to engage, and that has spillover effects to everything else.
I love that. That's beautiful. Now, of course, not all of us are South African. And so I would love to explore with this panel, starting with you, Megan, what does Ubuntu mean to you, and how does it show up in your context, whatever that may be?
Yeah. Hey, y'all.
And of course, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, I'll start with, I think, how it's manifested in my work. And I'm new to this term, not to this idea, but certainly to this framing, and it's beautiful. So I lead strategy and partnership engagement for workplace experience here at Google. My background is experience design, and I've always had a very strong belief that we find ourselves through other people. It is through interacting, through conversation, through being with other people that we learn who we want to be in the world. And because I bring people together for a living, whether it be in an office or at an event, I think there's real power in that, and I think that's why I've dedicated my life to it. Personally, we were talking about this a little before we kicked off, but I started my career in education. I have an education degree. I did that for 1 whole year before I was like, nope, I'm out. This is too hard. But then I flailed around for a really long time and dabbled in a bunch of different disciplines and industries, and it was through people that I found my way to myself, to the mission that I have now, to the job that I really wholeheartedly love and find a lot of meaning and purpose in. And it's through people that I discovered I was autistic at 40 years old. So I bring sort of the neurodivergent, I think, perspective to this conversation, and I think particularly for neurodivergent people, because there's so much about who we are that is invisible and that we tend to hide and mask, and finding other people with that same lived experience and who can relate has literally changed my life. There was an initiative that we started here during the pandemic that is now, it's graduated out, it's its own nonprofit called the New Project. But finding those people around the globe who were kind and generous enough to share their stories with me has made me braver. It's made me full, and it's given me a whole life that I can understand much more fully now. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
Daniel.
Yeah, of course.
Ubuntu, what does it mean to you? Who are you?
So to me, Ubuntu means, community being more important than the individual. And that's just from, personal experience and just observations through the world. For sure, I'd say you could see it in nature. Everything is vital within our ecosystem and food chains, and if one aspect of a food chain, completely falls off the face of the earth, and that's going to have a ripple effect on the rest of that food chain. But more importantly, in my personal life, or not more important, but on another note, in my personal life, just my background, the way I was raised with my whole family from my maternal grandmother's side being in the United States as immigrants from Mexico. We all lived within like a 1 mile radius of each other. It was like 30 of us. And, my cousins were across the street on the other side of the alley, down the block. And I could just go to any of their houses whenever things weren't the best at mine. And that really brought a sense of comfort and a sense of community. And it really navigated, the way I walk through the world and the way I interact with other people. And even, within my network and growing up, friendships, we've always found a way to help each other out. I wasn't always on the trajectory to go to college. It wasn't even a thought in my mind until my senior year of high school. I was like going to go to the military. And I think, there was this lawyer who went to my high school, and maybe he felt a sense of community and connection to that high school, and he came back, just talked about his path as a transfer student from community college all the way to, he went to a 4-year university at UMass. And that was a big inspiration to me because I thought that college wasn't right for me, but I decided to give it a shot. So I ended up going to college, community college, and that was really because somebody felt a sense of community to an institution that I was attached to. And I think it's also important for everyone here to think about, how you interact with day to day with other people and, the community and the people that have impacted you throughout your life. It's important to reflect on that. Mentors, family, friendships, whether it's negative or positive, it's going to really affect you, and it ties back to like, I am you, and you are me. So I really believe that this philosophy is a great way of living, for sure.
Autumn.
It's beautiful. So I'm going to introduce myself in my language. Akwe, everybody. Autumn Rose, Mesquemin and Nuxqua, Natessa Weiss Williams, Nachishayawank, Shinikak, Nachipayawank, Mokwa Wutamoan. My first name is Autumn Rose. My Shinikak name is Mesquemin and Nuxqua, which means Raspberry Star Woman, because I was born during the raspberry season on a starry night. And I am from the Shinikak Nation, located in Long Island, New York, and I am from the Bear Clan. Thank you for having me here today, and I really enjoyed learning more about Ubuntu. It really resonated with me and my cultural upbringing, and it reminds me of two things within my culture. There's the belief of the 7th generation, but so the belief of the 7th generation is that when everything that we do affects the 7 generations after us, and it's because of the 7 generations before us that we are where we are today. And when we think about making decisions for ourselves or within our community, we keep that in our mind. How does this affect the 7th generations while honoring those ancestors before us? And it also reminds me of a phrase that we say in almost everything is all of my relations. The ideology of Ubuntu is something that it seems like a way of life for the people in South Africa, and it's also a way of life and a way of being within the Shinikak Nation, and it's embedded in everything that we do. And we think about all of our relations, and when we say all my relations, it's the recognition that we are all interconnected and that we all have an effect on one another. So just as you are my brother, you are my sister, we are also connected to as you said, you were talking about the environment, we see the trees and the animals as our kin as well, because our relationship to that is directly connected to our ability to survive on this earth. So.
Thank you all for sharing such beautiful connections to this word and this concept and this way of being, this way of life. Danny, you mentioned something before. You talked about sometimes even the challenges of an interconnected state, an interconnected way of being. And so maybe we'll start with you, Autumn. I would love to understand from your perspective, what we unlock either individually or collectively by applying Ubuntu in our daily life and how we engage with the world, and if there are any challenges that arise with this concept.
Challenges that arise with a concept. It could become challenging to be reminded that you're all my relations when there's tension between another person.
Keep it funky now.
Yes. I think that can get really, really hard. I think within the Shinnecock community, we are our own government. Running governments, being a part of that, we see in our larger government how much tension and conflict that can create. So I think that knowing that, going through conflict, that can be very challenging, but also I think remembering that is also what keeps you grounded. Because for Shinnecock, we are such a small community, so it does have very tangible effects when something affects one of us. It truly does affect the whole community. So I think that when there's tension, it could be hard to navigate that and recognize that, but also that's what keeps you grounded. The other aspect of that is when I've gone through my own personal challenges in life, I think that thinking about my community has always been my guided north, or has always kept me on my own path, because I may not know where I'm going, but I know that I want to make decisions that are going to positively impact my community and the generations behind me, and make the generations, my grandparents and my elders, very proud of me, because I am here today because of what they were able to do. So I think that whenever I go through my own challenges and I've had moments where I've lost hope and lost direction, that has always helped me find it again.
That's beautiful.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
I'm a proud American, and I love our country. I've represented it multiple times abroad. And I'm also deeply aware of some of the challenges and foibles of what it means to be an American. One of which is, in my view, an almost hyper-stylized sense of individuality. You know, the kind of archetypical American is the rugged individual that goes off and makes their own way, you know, needs no one, and finds their own prosperity, which has its merits, and also its flaws. And one of which is that if we're so focused on hyper-individualism and the benefit of the individual, it's hard to look at. Let me take a step back. I came to the conclusion a long time ago there are basically only two types of people in the world. Those that can look at someone different from themselves and see a common humanity and act accordingly, and those who can't and don't. And everything is explained by that. Because if you see yourself in another human being who happens to be suffering, how can you walk by their suffering?
Yeah.
Because it's like you're suffering. Or you say, that's just them, right? I'm a do me. And how we make these series of micro choices turns into what our collective life as a community is.
Yeah.
Right? And so, as we were saying a bit last night, I mean, having the courage to be able to choose community has profound consequences, but it's one that I think we could use more of. One last thing I'll say. In South Africa, there's this beautiful phrase they say, let us work to find each other. We don't say that in the United States. We should. And what they mean by that is when we are locked in disagreement, just like people in a dark room, let us work to find each other, meaning let us work to find those small places, even if it's a kernel of a truth, where we can agree. And let us agree to agree where we can agree, and use the practice of where we do agree to give us courage and muscle memory to address the areas where we don't agree. But it's a practice, right?
Yeah.
It's a mindset. You have to sort of think about it that way.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. Let us find each other. Let's work to find each other. So let us find those even those small places where we do agree, so we can have the practice of agreement so we can use that practice to address the places where we don't agree.
I think that's so beautiful. And fundamentally, not really how we operate. I mean, just for a little historical context, you mentioned the American individualism that certainly comes out of post-Enlightenment thinking, the pursuit of individual North Star, I am the guide. It's very individualistic, and that's a part of the philosophy that I think informed some of the rugged individualism of America right now. And so I'm curious from you all, Megan, maybe we'll start with you. How do we cultivate more Ubuntu, which is largely so inherently countercultural?
Yeah, a couple ideas. Is anyone familiar with an overstory? Do you know what an overstory is?
Why don't you explain it for
Okay.
us?
Wanted to get a baseline. But so overstory is basically the canopy above a forest. And an overstory controls the light and the resources that get to everything below it. And I think part of our problem as a society right now is we have mostly negative overstories. We're never going to find middle ground. There's so much hate in the world. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. You can't love your coworker. They're not your friends. They don't care about you. Right? There's a lot of like cultural overstories right now that are controlling the light that reaches us, and that is the problem for us to solve. We have to find each other and rewrite those stories because they're lies. Like the stuff we see on the news is happening, but that is not all that's happening. And I think, you know, when you did the reflection of like, think of a moment, I mean, I was absolutely flooded with moments just in the last couple years where I've been with people and felt such an incredible connection to them, their struggles, their experiences, right? Like, I remember post-pandemic, the first time going back to vote, I was terrified because that was also like a very scary political moment, you know, like it was a time, right? But when I got to the voting place, people were so kind and they were hugging and everyone was talking to everyone else. And I was like, oh, this is the truth. This is the real truth. People are kind and good, and we mostly just want to take care of each other. We just have to be brave enough and vulnerable enough to do that. So I think rewriting the overstory and figuring out how we can let more light in is huge. There's also a concept called sonder, and scientifically, wonder and awe is one of the most incredible emotions we can feel. It's tied to more productivity, more creativity, just being a happier person. Sonder is a counterpoint to that, but equally powerful. And it's when we see other people and we acknowledge you are a complex human who is going through so much in your life right now, just like I am. And we acknowledge that we all have these deep lives that are invisible to other people, right? But what a sense of connectedness. There's a guy, John Koenig, who wrote the Dictionary of Obscure Experience. It's like basically giving language to the things we feel and can't explain to one another. But check it out. I think sonder is something we all need to try to feel more of in the world and talk about because that's real.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Daniel, Autumn? How do we cultivate more Ubuntu?
Yeah, what comes to mind first for me in cultivating Ubuntu, you know, I've been on the internet for literally half my life. And a lot of interactions are in the internet. I've made friends over the internet, you know, whether that be friends at school that I wouldn't have met otherwise, friends in, I like to make music, like friends that I can collaborate on music with. But I think for me, cultivating Ubuntu is not only in person, at the office, day to day, when you're walking in the street, where you go eat, places you frequent, you know, treating people with respect, and kindness and compassion, and allowing that to be a domino effect to the people that they interact with afterwards. But, you know, online, it's really easy to get stuck in echo chambers and communities that don't serve you, and then those thoughts in those communities won't serve the people that you interact with in person and in real life. So I think it's important, you know, to also take how you'd be in person and take that to the internet, whether that be on Facebook, YouTube. People are quick to get into arguments and debates and say things they wouldn't say in person. But also being intentional about your usage. You know, what posts you interact with. The algorithm it favors creators that are very extreme on either end. And it's very easy to just kind of fall into one side. So being intentional about how you interact, what you like, what you comment, what you share, I think, it's going to have a massive impact on the way you think in your subconscious mind, but also in how you interact with people day to day.
So I'm hearing you say that cultivating Ubuntu is also about curation.
Yes, 100%.
Very
Curating your community
Yes.
and,
Absolutely.
who you surround yourself with in person and digitally.
That's wonderful. Any thoughts, Autumn?
Yeah, there was a speaker earlier today, and they said there was a difference between individualism versus individuality. And I think focusing on that individuality and really, lately a lot of my goals are more focused on character traits. What kind of woman do I want to be? What kind of woman do I see myself as? And building that character and building that person inside and what is my individuality, who I am. So I think that that's an important piece. But I also think that figuring out ways to give back, to do volunteer work. I think for me, I had this moment where I was just really hurt by people. People are kind, but people also can be really mean. And I was just hurt by a lot of different things that I was going through all at once. And something that really helped me come back to seeing the kindness and seeing the light that exists within each and every one of us is doing volunteer work. And even when I chose volunteer work, I was like, I'm not ready to work with people. And I chose to work with animals. And I think that that's something too, is like, sometimes the world will show you how mean it can be. You have to do the work to remind yourself that that's only part of it, that's not all of it. And for me, I went and started walking dogs because I love animals, and I wasn't supposed to adopt, but that happened. And that really helped me, and so I think that that is one of many different ways to then get yourself back into being within the community. Finding yourself and finding out how you can give back to the community is a part of Ubuntu.
I love that. And actually, I think I would love to hear from each of you, what does a practice of Ubuntu look like in day-to-day life? This room is filled with business professionals, and I'm sure we would love to, ideally, do this all day, every day. But what does this mean practically? What does it mean to make Ubuntu real and tangible and sustainable as a habit and a way of being on a regular basis?
So we're in Atlanta, which is one of the capital cities of the South. I don't know if everybody here is a Southerner or not, or from elsewhere. But in the South, we say, what, y'all don't speak? Meaning you have to greet people. Look them in the eye, greet them, be kind, right? I mean, just that little bit, because to your point, everyone's fate is living a silent series of issues that none of us know, and just being able to be that sort of present, just that moment. I'll tell you a quick story. So I wear bow ties. It's my signature thing. I actually feel like people won't recognize me if I don't wear a bow tie, so I gotta wear it. And I have a bald now, so I wear a hat usually, so I had a fedora. And so I was coming through the airport in Washington, coming here, bow tie, suit, fedora, and this Southern African-American lady said, "Sir, you look as clean as a chitlin." And if you're a Southerner,
Okay.
you know, that's high praise.
Okay.
Because chitlins are supposed to be clean, because you don't eat them.
Yeah.
All right, and it was one of the best compliments I've ever gotten. And the point is that, and when you feel that way, you want to share it forward,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so that is one basic thing that all of us can do.
I like that. My grandmother would be so happy to hear you say that.
I'll pile on with another Southernism. How about that? My grandmother used to say, "Speak the truth and shame the devil."
Yep.
And I think that I'm trying to honor her by embodying that. It just means be yourself, be authentic, be vulnerable, be human, so that others can embrace their full humanity when they're with you in your presence. And also, like, really speak the truth when you see injustice or unfairness or, we can't self-actualize unless we bring others along on that journey. So yeah, that's from me, Ma. From Meemaw to you all.
Thank you, Mimo.
For me, I would say there's like, I went to a KIP middle school. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the
KIP?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
KIP Foundation. But something that they taught us very early on, I was in 5th grade, they showed us a documentary about paying it forward. And that's something that I definitely tried to implement in day-to-day life. Even though I'm very early in my career, I try to just pay it forward in ways I can. I can't donate $1 million to a foundation that I love. But if I can just show up to some, a colleague of mine's event outside of work, or, interact with someone, I try to interact with people randomly on the street, and just try to brighten their day if they're not looking like they're doing too hot.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I try to do day to day, is just paying it forward in any way I can.
Yeah.
Yes, that. I love all of that. But I think something that I've really been working on doing lately is when I think of somebody, I let them know and I message them. I have a lot of love for my brother or my friend, but I might not say that all the time. I may say it in different ways. So I think just remembering to say those good things to the ones that you love. So that's something I've been doing lately. When somebody crosses my mind and I can contact them, I let them know that you've crossed my mind. I hope all is well.
I think that's great. One thing we do here at Google, and it came up in the panel that was in this room previously, we have this thing at Google called G-Thanks, and you're able to send free and sometimes even a small monetary gift to someone to say, hey, thank you so much for being supportive in this way or going above and beyond in that way. And it really creates, I think, a culture of gratitude, but also a culture of appreciation and shared understanding of how you have helped me in this way. And it really does, it catches fire I was stunned when I came here for the first time and I saw that practice so embedded in the culture. And it's something you can do for free and start where you are, right? At work, you can send, it costs you nothing to send a nice email to a colleague and say, thanks so much for this X thing you helped me with, or it was so great to see you in the hallway this morning, hope you have a great day. Like that sort of small practice can create real culture change and culture shift in the organizations where you are. It doesn't cost you much. It's not gonna get you in trouble with HR. It's a safe way to practice, I think, Ubuntu in a regular, consistent basis. And one of the panelists mentioned that he actually sets time on his calendar every week. So there's dedicated time for that community gratitude practice. Maybe we have individual practices of gratitude and we say, oh, I'm so grateful for X, Y, Z things that are maybe just about ourselves. But how do we extend that gratitude practice to our communities in a way that is still authentic, but helps to cultivate more of that Ubuntu for each of us? Yeah.
And if I could add to that, some of the resources given to us about the Ubuntu philosophy, one of the phrases that really caught my eye was acting on your compassion. It's easy to feel some sort of emotion and just internalize it, not share it with the person that had an impact on you, or maybe wanting to do something for someone, but you don't feel like you can. Just acting on that compassion in any way you can, like you said, maybe an email, or just, blocking time, like a daily gratitude block to just communicate that with those people. It's very important.
I recently heard a Southern preacher say that love ought to look like something.
Love ought to look like something. Well, I like that.
Profound, yeah.
All right. Well, we've had a little bit of conversation up here, but I would love to bring you into the discussion. Any questions from you, thoughts, musings? Where is Ubuntu resonating? Yeah, let's get you a mic just so the virtual room can hear you.
Hello, my name is Agustin. I have a question for Mr. Daniel. How do you cultivate culture in a very competitive environment like the tech industry, without it being like in a forced way, more like organic?
Yeah, so, even though I'm very early in my career, I have the pleasure of being part of a cohort, right? The Cloud Academy. And I notice everybody there wants to do their best and they want to succeed. And it's easy to really let those competitive thoughts maybe kind of shy you away from the group and not want to participate. But I think it's important to really embrace that competitive environment and, just know that you're doing your best in terms of your output and your job and knowledge seeking, but also sharing those resources is going to open up that environment for everybody to start collaborating. I've done that on every team I've been a part of, whether that was in career or in sports, in college, just finding ways to really just provide value to everyone, open up room for collaboration. Even though it's competitive, everyone was competing for the starting spot on the team or, at the job, everyone's competing to be, top of the sales team. If you open up that space for collaboration, it's only going to benefit everyone. Yeah.
Can I offer something? I think that there is something really important about demystifying the notion that operating in community comes at the cost of success. And I have seen the best leaders be people who are very good at cultivating Ubuntu. And it, I think, has been a hallmark of leadership in my experience. The best leaders, the most successful, the sharpest also, are those people who can think about what's happening collectively and respond to that. To make it more real and realistic, I watch a lot of game shows and Survivor and Top Chef. And you typically find people who make it to the end are super competitive, but also have this leadership quality and are able to galvanize people and think about what's best for everybody. And that actually puts them at some of the last people standing. And so I do think it's really important for us to, again, break for ourselves the idea that to be successful, I'm not able to do it at the same time.
Can I offer something too? So I didn't realize this until I was in tech, in a highly quote unquote competitive environment, but you get to choose how you compete.
Yeah.
And you get to choose how you define winning in that competition, right? So I think in the corporate context, winning means you're acknowledged for being a valuable contributor. You may get paid a little more money, you might get a promotion, right? You actually can't do that as a solely individual contributor in a corporate environment. It's such a communal experience. You need others in order to succeed. So how I've sort of redefined winning in my context is showing up as kind as possible and bringing as many people along. And that's when I got promoted. So, competition is up to you to define what that looks like, and winning, you also get to decide what that looks like for yourself and your career.
Yeah.
My name is Jolie Wormter. My question is directed to Megan, but for anyone on the panel who this resonates with, feel free to answer as well. I've recently gone through a period of my life where I've discovered an invisible community, to the word that you used earlier, that has really helped me on my journey of self-discovery. It has helped me understand through mirrors of people who have shared experience what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, and helped recontextualize my own journey. So my question to you all is, how has serving your community served you?
Congratulations, first and foremost. I'm so happy to hear that you found a community that is adding value to your life. Well, I mean, I literally started a nonprofit for the friends that I made because neurodivergent people, people with hidden disabilities are more underemployed than people with mobility and accessibility disabilities. Somewhere between 30 and 40% of neurodivergent adults are underemployed or unemployed. And so I'm out here trying to fix that, right? There are a lot of people with incredible skills, incredibly creative brains, and wild capabilities to think outside the box. Companies like Google are missing out. So I've tried to identify what are the pain points of this community that I love. You are adding so much value to my life, and how can I do whatever I can do to solve for that? So that's how it's manifested for me. But I think conversation and listening was a critical part of getting to understanding how I could serve. Listening, holding space, lots and lots of individual conversations.
If I may, I'd like to turn your premise on its head a little bit. So I am deeply grateful that you have found your community, and I think all of us have gone through some sort of journey as well, and I certainly have in a number of ways in mine. One of the other things, though, that I found that it's incredibly important to do is to be able to understand and recognize other people's communities. Because as powerful as our own truth is to us, other people's truths are very powerful to them. And I think sometimes we can get in trouble with individually and as a community, as a nation, when we refuse to honor or respect other people's truths. And that can be hard sometimes because it can come into direct conflict with our truths. I'll give you a couple of basic examples, be a little vulnerable, right? So I'm obviously an African American man. I deeply honor and respect my own African American heritage, raised in the Southern Baptist Church, which is also, certainly when I was growing up, very homophobic. Even just unconsciously homophobic, right? It was just like, the water's wet and Adam and Steve, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, I mean, from the pulpit. And so it took, and I went to the Naval Academy in the 90s, right? Which was not the most gay-friendly place. And it took just really listening and speaking and engaging, just in people's presence with people that were in the LGBTQI community, that has made me much more of an advocate for them. Again, on the basis of what I said, only two types of people in the world, those who can recognize common humanity and those who don't. I consider myself a fierce feminist in ways that I think, although I was raised to be a decent Southern gentleman, I just don't think that it was necessarily, I would have, right? I mean, and to the point where I even I fully understand that as much as I consider myself a feminist, I have not walked the earth in a female body, and there are some truths that I just cannot understand, right? But I respect that I can't. And so I think, from whatever our perspectives are, I think it's very important for us to find our own communities, recognize other people have theirs as well, and then try to find bridges between the two.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Don't be shy. What are we feeling now as a room? How are we feeling? What are we feeling? What are some words we're feeling, things we're thinking? Brave might be one. We're feeling brave. Great. Validated, empowered.
Validated, power.
Validated. Included.
Included.
Comfortable.
Comfortable.
Did I hear comfortable in the back as well? Comfortable. Okay. Any thoughts on how you might walk away and apply Ubuntu maybe in the next 5 minutes? What's something that you can commit to do?
I feel like I'm going to be more aware of what I have next to me and understand that if I feel out of place, they also feel out of place, and that we just have to be there for each other, and everyone has their own battles at home, and the only way for us to go ahead and succeed is by helping each other. It's not about competition, it's about collaboration. So yeah, think about more in a collectivistic way.
Yeah. A really interesting thought to have at a conference with networking. How do we apply Ubuntu in a networking context? Really interesting.
I'd say continuing to lead with gratitude. I'm sure you all know LA fires, right? And I'm from LA, and just seeing how people came together. I wasn't there in person, but my family was, and just to see that literally, we're all humans, and we don't always get to see that humanity in individuals, but I think that really shined light to everyone, especially because there was a lot of wealthy folks affected. And just hearing from them too, and their stories and how they're processing this. Because everyone says, oh, well, they're rich, they could, replace it, but we're all human. I'm sure they had stuff in there, or, photographs that will never be replaced.
Yeah.
So just continuing to lead with gratitude, that's something that I try to do every day. I wake up and I give thanks for everything that I have. And it may look a little different every day, but I think that also reflects as I engage with others.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for coming and also just being in this space and being okay to engage in what can feel like a little fuzzy topic. And it feels maybe out of place at a business conference. Why are we talking about Ubuntu? But there are certainly real implications of this for us and real realities for us to be intentional about how we think about our community more broadly, how we show up for ourselves and for other people. And so I want to thank our panelists so much for being vulnerable and sharing. And I believe you are going to stay in this room. And I'll actually be in here with you. But feel free to mingle for the next 10 minutes, get a bio break, water, but come back here if you need to. I think our panelists will stick around if you want to chit-chat with them. Sure. Yeah? Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.